Maintenant, je donne la parole à professeur Mbaye, professeur associé à la Duke University, qui est une université bien placée sur le podium des 10 meilleures universités des États-Unis. Merci d'avoir fait le déplacement. Merci d'être parmi nous. Je vous donne la parole, professeur.
Thank you. Thank you, Amina, and we for organizing this event and for inviting me. Normally, when invited to a conference, I often require at least 30 minutes to 35 minutes. I am of a background where you do it the right way or you do not do it. But I guess today will be the exception. Anyway, thank you for inviting me and thank you for organizing this event. I am delighted to be here. As I said yesterday, the problem of marginalizing women or the need to empower women are rooted in many factors, including colonialism, religion, Islam or Christianity, capitalism, and patriarchal power. So for me, I look at it within the framework of global justice, equality, and democracy. As an academic, my desire has often been to reconcile between theory and practice, concept and experience, ideas and lived reality. There have been some good studies on the core of the problem in the last 50 years. But the lingering issue has often been how to address the problem, how to make it legible to those we serve and those serving. As a person whose academic background focused on Africa and the Middle East, I know much that there is a rich cultural tradition in Africa and among the Arab on matriarchal status in this society. Of course, we have all read the wonderful scholarship of many Arab women who wrote on this issue. Everyone here, I guess most of us are aware of Laila Ahmad's work, of Fatima Marnisi's work. In a more personal level, as an American of Senegalese background, I am interested in how to introduce khidma in Wolof, service, to my profession of scholarship and teaching. But there are conception of equality among the Wolof of the Senegambian region, but it may have been lost due to colonialism and religious misinterpretation. There is a Wolof saying that nit nitay garabam, the cure of human is human, regardless to gender. There is a Wolof saying among the Senegambians that gor gorlu jigéen a tax. The very act of being a man is defined by a woman, not the man himself. The Arabic tradition is also very rich. As I said earlier, the work of many Arab women's scholarship that look at pre-Islamic Arabia and how women was central to the Bedouin society. There is the old Arabic saying that "An-nasu lin-nasi min badwin wa min ajamin ba'dun li ba'din wa in lam yash'uru khadamu." There are some good translation of it to show that in pre-Islamic Arabia, women was central, was actually the center of power. So the problem we have when we talk about empowering women, sometimes it is about legibility. How do we argue among different constituencies in a way that they understand these concepts are not foreign to them? They can domesticate it. So I prepared these 25 pages for this event, but I think I want to read it. Hopefully when we meet in Tunisia next year, I will have the opportunity to read it. But some of them are in my book, 2011. If you look at my name, you will find a book called Towards Civil Society-Based Governance in Africa. There are some ideas there. 2019, I also have a book called Political Islam, Justice and Governance. So that also look at the issue of gender within the Arab world. There are some segments in that argument that you may find useful. But for the sake of time, I will briefly cover certain areas on personal level. For this slide, if we can move it, the next slide. I'm glad that some presenters earlier, not Ambassador at Tunisia, did talk beautifully about the history of women empowerment within global institutions, starting from 1970s. So I don't need to revisit it. But I think it is very important to look at China in 1994, because the second paragraph was very unique, that the impact of electoral system on political representation is a must for women. If we move on, in 2000, it was very unique for UN to look at conflict, especially in Africa. Often conflict occurred and the primary victims are women. So they must be a part of the solution. So women must be a part of conflict prevention and resolution and peacekeeping and peace building in Africa. A third also decision that was taken by the African Union in 2004 insists on the 50-50 balance among officers in highest rank. If we look at just quickly, I always think unless we can measure something, we can't study it. It is very important for us. As we look at global human struggle and problems, we come to capture it in terms of numbers. If we look at Africa, which is in Africa futurism, there are some studies that it is the future of the global economy and global humanity. The population is about 1,387,000,000. But actually, because I took these numbers at the same time, women are about 50-50 within these ongoing changes within society. But when you look at it in terms of representation, if you go back to 1995, following China, women representation in parliament is the key because political representation starts with parliament, it was 11.7%. In 2004, by the time African Union was adopting it, it was no major change, it was 15%. If you look at the report of last year, Inter-Parliamentary Union report, minor change. women in parliament was 25.5%. Here's some more accredited data that we don't have time. Okay, yeah. That is the slide I talked earlier about. And this is another one I talked about earlier. Sorry, I'm running two different slides here. The one I talked about the change that happened between following China and the African Union decision, minor change, and the report, parliamentary report of last year, minor change, 25%. So you look at it you can look at this data, I have it on micro level, but we don't have time. But what is relevant to us is you look at Africa. Often in post-conflict countries, they tended to go back to women. So you have tremendous increase in Mali because of ongoing conflict. Egypt in the last couple of years with Sisi. But we won't have time to go into detail with that. There is also another one regional trend, because this is important for me, because I am focusing on sub-Saharan Africa. If you look at it, it is change, but still minor change. It's 25% from 9% after China, in that up till 2020, 25% representation. You can look at it comparatively and also look at the data. It may be of use to many of us. More here also on regional level. We don't have time to talk about it, but I just wanted to share it with you. So go back to me and as the academic, as a professor, how do I address these issues within my teaching? There is a challenge in many top American universities, because as a professor, I have to publish. That is what the university wants you to do. Second, you teach. Service is really not very relevant, not even counted in your promotion. So it is a challenge. We know in our practices that historically, since World War I, even later with the rise of the civil rights movement in the US, there was a focus on education in order to promote women's empowerment. But I often argue that it's not working, and we have seen it in terms of numbers. It is not working. If you look at what we have here in Africa, women are making change politically. This is Miss Salah in Sudan. It's the symbol of the revolution in 2019. We have women from Zimbabwe to South Africa against sexual violence. We also have, thank you. Yeah, this is the slide I'm talking about. We have, I'm translating it here, education, the first paradigm argument for education in order to empower women politically. So, if you look at women contribution in Africa, we have Sudan, Miss Salah here, symbol of the Sudanese Revolution 2019. We have women from Zimbabwe to South Africa, also against sexual violence. And we have women in Tunis talking about equal access to constitution, Dustur, Yusawi, Bain al-Jami, ay Bain al-Muwatinin, a constitution that put every single citizen in an equal footing. So the education argument has not been working. Why? Because of some of these points. Some of them are uniquely Africans, others are uniquely human. Number one, the role of traditionally expected of women, which is to take care of the household, raising children. Number two, sexist belief that women are not equal to men at home, at work, or in government. Women as political outsiders is also very common among conservative forces in the US. Women as political outsiders is very familiar also in many Latin American communities. Earlier marriage, very common in less developed countries and Africa. And female genital mutilation is very common in the Horn of Africa, Sudan, Somalia. Just numbers here. Let me go back. Yeah, this is the slide I was talking about. Problems. So some of these problems are human in nature, global. Some are very unique, the last couple. And if we look at the last point about education, the argument for educating women to solve the problem has other weaknesses. Because if you look at here, this is just, a very recent report from UNESCO. Out of school girls has been drastically going down. And you can look at these numbers on a micro level in Africa, where it is about 25 to 30%. So the argument for education as key to empowering women cannot be supported, not by quantitative argument and not by qualitative argument either. So that is why I argue for activism. Activism, it has to do with civil society. If we look at the literature, from Alexis de Tocqueville's wonderful work, from Guy Grant's 1985 book, to Robert Putnam's Making Democracy Work, we have solid data that civil society can make tremendous change in society. So conceptually, since we don't have time, when we talk about civil society, we talk about this space here between family and the state. So you have NGOs, you have community-based organizations, you have universities, the list goes on. In my case, I argue that university matter. How do we make university relevant? And I will just, for the sake of time, stop here. And if we have time, maybe play a video that represents in a very succinct way what I basically do as a professor. I hope, Amina, we have 2 minutes for them to play the video. Yeah. Yeah.
Miss Mary Mac Rogers black with silver buttons all down her back. She asked her mother for 50 cents. See me Elvis jump over the fence. They jump so high, they touch the sky, and never came back to the world.
My name is Yasmine. I just graduated from university in Washington, D.C. I studied international relations. I worked here at Al-Masri because I feel like it's a strong NGO because it's a local run NGO and it's looking at the problems we have in Egypt and trying to develop in terms of community development and reintegrating children with their families, and I thought that was very important. Because of like the low income situations and situations at home, because unemployment and the low wages, a lot of the situations at home are very volatile, so the children run to the street as a means of either escape from abuse or as a means of making money even though they're quite young. And so the streets becomes a place of not only freedom but also becomes a place where they can help their families, they try and earn money, but then also there's a lot of violence on the streets and they end up sometimes joining gangs and facing situations that children at that age shouldn't have to face. Goal is to reintegrate all their children with their families. We're not an orphanage. It's not that all these children don't have families. They do, and a lot of times shelters take kids in and just feed them and bathe them, but we have a long-term goal. Our goal, is for one day the family situation to be good enough that they can go back to their families. And also we look at community development, so that if you can start developing a community and if you can, address the problem before it gets to the stage where the children goes to the streets, then you're sort of fixing it before it happens.
We try to let them feel that Al-Masri, their house, not feel that they come and stay here and learn something and go out after that. No, they feel that Al-Masri is my house and I can stay here and I can develop myself and also I can return to my family to develop my family.
So we can just stop it there, if you don't mind. Yeah. So to put it just briefly, I, as a director of Duke Engage, Originally, I wanted to start from 2011 and show many short videos through 2019. You see, activities that I often undertake with my students. So the argument for me is service is needed to promote activism within civil society. How do you do it, and how do you do it as a professor, has to be through sacrifice. How has to be outside the understanding of your duty is in research and teaching, but to add a service component. Often these are our partners in Cairo. We don't see a lot of female members because of cultural issues, but the majority are female members. 3 children in Cairo. We created a center where I take about 12 to 14 students from undergraduate students from Duke University. We read about women issues in this region, in Egypt, and then we argue about it, and then we engage this community of mostly girls and teach them certain skills in which they can survive patriarchal society in the future. So thank you very much, and I will stop here.
Thank you very much, Professor Mbaye.